Let's read a story, shall we? The Avaricious Blacksmith. A tailor and a blacksmith were returning together one evening from a town in which they had been working at their different trades. As evening came on, they saw the sun setting behind the hills, and presently, as the moon rose, came the sound of distant music, which grew more distinct as they proceeded on their way. The tones were rather unearthly, but so charming that they quite forgot their fatigue and went forward with rapid steps. After walking a little distance, they reached the hillside, and presently caught sight of a crowd of little men and women holding hands and dancing merrily in a circle to the strange music they had heard. In the center of the ring, which the pixies danced, stood a little old man, yet larger and stouter than the rest. He wore a coat of many colors, and his snow-white beard descended to his breast. The travelers stood still and gazed in wonder at the dancers, and presently the old man made signs to them, and the little people separated so that they might come within the circle. The blacksmith, who was a bold fellow, had a slight hump on his back. He stepped in without fear, but the tailor was at first rather timid and held back. In a very short time, however, seeing how merry and good-natured they all looked, he took heart and entered the circle. Immediately they closed the ring again, and the little folks danced and sprung about in the wildest manner. Meanwhile, the old man in the center took out a large knife which hung at his girdle, and he sharpened it on a stone. Feeling the edge with his finger, he turned, and he looked at the strangers in a manner that caused them to tremble with fear. They were not kept long in suspense, however, for the little man seized the smith, and with the greatest rapidity shaved off his hair and beard clean in one stroke. He then turned to the tailor and did the same to him. But their alarm vanished when the old man, after finishing his performance, slapped them on the shoulder in the most friendly manner, as if to tell them they had done well in submitting to be shaved without resistance. He then pointed with his finger to a heap of coals that lay on one side, and made signs that they should fill their pockets. They both obeyed, although they could not imagine what could be use of these coals. They soon left the little people after this, for it was getting late, and they wanted to find a night's lodging. Just as they reached the valley, a clock from the neighboring cloisters struck 12. Immediately the music ended, the little people vanished, and the hillside lay calm and still in the moonlight. The two travelers found, after a time, a roadside inn, but there was no accommodation for them except a bundle of straw, to which they laid themselves down, dressed as they were, too fatigued to think of removing the coals from their pockets. But towards the morning, the heavy weight awoke them earlier than normal, and on putting their hands into their pockets, they could scarcely believe their eyes when they saw that, instead of coals, their hands were full of pure gold. Their surprise was as great as finding that their beards had grown again, and their heads were covered with hair. They had suddenly become very rich, but the blacksmith, who had a greedy disposition, had filled both pockets with coals, so that he possessed twice as much gold as the tailor. Yet he was not satisfied, and he proposed to his companion that they should stay until the next day, and go again in the evening, and get more treasures out of the little old men. The tailor, however, refused. "I have enough," he said. "I am quite contented. I only wish to be a master of a business of my own, and to marry the charming maiden whom I love, and then I am a happy man." However, to oblige his friend, he stayed another day at the inn, and in the evening the blacksmith took 2 sacks on his shoulders and went alone to the hillside. he found the little people dancing and singing as on the previous night. They received him into the ring, and the old man again shaved him, and made a sign as before that he should take as much gold as he liked. He did not hesitate to fill only his pockets, but the 2 sacks as well, and returned home, congratulating himself on his good fortune. Though he had a bed this night, he laid himself down in the clothes, saying, "I shall know when the gold becomes heavy, for it will wake me." And at last he fell asleep with the pleasant expectation of awakening in the morning a very rich man. As soon as he opened his eyes in the morning, he began to dive into his pockets, but it was up to his astonishment at finding that they contained nothing but black coals. Handful after handful he pulled out, but no gold. "Well, I still have the gold I got on the first night," he said. "That is safe." But to his surprise and alarm to find it all turned back again into coal, and that he was penniless. He put his black hands to his head and found that it was still bald and his chin smooth and without a beard. But he had not come to the end of his misfortunes, for the hump on his back had grown larger and made him more deformed than ever. When he discovered at last that he was being punished for his covetousness, he began to groan and lament so loudly as to wake up the good tailor. He kindly comforted him in his misfortune and said generously, "Don't grieve any more. We have been companions and travelers together, and now you can stay with me and share what I have. It will be enough for us both." He kept his word, but the poor blacksmith never could get rid of the hump on his back, and was always obliged to wear a cap to cover his bald head.